Before we start our class today, I wanted to share the Can-Can cat that fell off the martini glass with you. She actually looks so much better in real life to what she looks like in the photos. Using the same basic concept that we did with the Can-Can cat, we did the real lashes. But something that was really interesting is we made this really unusual mask, and that mask is made of porcelain. So somewhere in one of my classes I'll pick up on how we actually did that. By now you will have had your kits will have arrived, and you've got a mixture of things in your kit. I'm going to start off by just going over some painting techniques again and clarifying some detailing information for you. For those of you that had the unfortunate your cat breaking, don't feel bad. I have real cats that come into my studio and we have similar problems. So I'm going to quickly fix her and get her ready for our class. For those that wanted to see what my studio looks like these days, this is it, sitting on my swivel chair, going around. That's my desk. I do work at that desk, believe it or not. And here I have two of my dollhouses that we're busy with. And if I go back round this corner, there's the bridal boutique, and we swing around, and those are the shops. I haven't quite decided what I'm going to do with these two shops now. It's all changed since they were up in my little shop. And then hidden away behind all this stuff is my reading corner, which is really great because nobody could find me here. Right down there you'll see, there's my chair and some of my books. Right, let's get ourselves ready and start our class. Right, I've prepared my wee as I call it. I know we all have different names for these things. I've put a piece of polystyrene on. I know Dana covers hers with a plastic. I don't. I just give my cat and throw away that piece and put another piece on next time. My kids love that I will stop in the middle of traffic if I see a piece of polystyrene lying in somebody's rubbish, because it's awesome. It's just such a fantastic material to use. Okay, I'm going to quickly repair this kitty and go through painting of her eyes, and then we're going to start dressing her. Great, I've prepared her. I'm going to just put a drop of glue on the base so that I can glue her down, that she's going to stand in one position for me. And I'm going to let that dry for a moment. When I originally designed this workshop, it was for the Frills and Francie magazine about 2 years ago when we did the Accolade. And the original outfit was designed to utilize my sewing machine. Our machines have such wonderful stitches, and I thought I would use that to make my clothes look different and embellish them. So I'm going to do two different workshops in this one. I'm going to do the dress done really with a sewing machine and not using very much lace, and then I'm going to do the beefed up version, the more gothic version with all the lace and trimmings. I'm showing you at the moment a sample that we stitched out with different needles. That's a wing needle, which gives you that sort of hole. So is that. Those are called heirloom stitches. I always, of course, love the edging, the different scallops, and they're pretty easy to do if you know how. And one of the secrets to doing a good scallop on a piece of fabric is, in fact, putting your piece of fabric when it's cut onto a piece of paper. Now, in the embroidery industry, where we do machine embroidery, we use a paper backing, and my backing that I get in South Africa is almost like a blotting paper, and it's awesome to work with because it peels off very easily. So I'm going to quickly cut out my petticoat and put some edges on. Hold on. What I've done here is I've taken a piece of ordinary white computer paper, which you all got, and I've taken the piece of white that I'm going to use for my petticoat, and I'm going to stitch it on that. The paper will stabilize the fabric and stop it from puckering or pulling tight. And once we've finished, we just tear off our paper, and we will get left with that sort of result. Right, our petticoat is basically 4 inches by 4 inches. I love it that I'm actually a quilter and we work everything in inches because most of the books come from America. In South Africa, we in fact work with centimeters. For those that are not sure of the conversion, if you get confused, most tape measures will have inches on one side and centimeters on the other. So 4 inches would be approximately 10 centimeters. I'm working on a grid that is in fact a quilting grid done in inches. I'm going to lay down my piece of fabric and I'm going to cut my 4 inches by 4 inches. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to cut it here, straight into a square, and here. She's got a lovely petticoat. It's got all this lovely stitching on, and it's been fun. You've learned a new technique on how to use your machine. All machines can do this, even the very old ones. If you don't know, it's a good time to get hold of your machine supplier or start searching the net. For those that are looking for ideas like this, as an ex-Husqvarna dealer, I have plenty of tutorials on how to do these sort of heirloom sewing stitches. Email me and I'll gladly send them to you. Right, let's bring our cat forward and see how we're doing. And we're working under the light at the moment. I just want to get her in a full view. There we go. Great. I'm going to do her petticoat. I've cut it quite a bit too high, so we will fold that down. We don't want to create bulk in her waistline, so just a small turnover, and I'm going to put my petticoat on pretty much like that, and trim it off like we did with our first class with the cat. We just basically used the body shape and sculpted the petticoat onto that. My favourite way of doing anything, of course, is drowning everything with glue. I'm not going to put too much glue on her this time. I just want to put a filmed glue. I'm going to spread it over her now, just to hold her petticoat nicely in place for me. Right, now we just really rub it in so that it's smooth, we don't have any glue lumps. If you find you've got too much glue, just wipe it onto a towel or a wet wipe. I tend to like working with my wet wipes, so I'm going to just grab one of my wet wipes, and besides the fact that I love the smell of the wet wipes, which smells like babies, I use that just to sort of clear up anything where I might have too much. Great. Going to take our petticoat and just sort of gently put it on her. To bring it round. Because this is cotton and not a stretchy fabric, I'm going to sort of tip and cut and nip and tuck a little bit. I'm going to give her a little bit of a tail at the back here, but I'm not going to worry about that because we're going to cover all that now with fabric. So let's give her a couple of tucks. First one would be down on the hip, and on this side. Just put it in nice, neat, and do the same at the back. Where you've got that little bit of overlap, you can just put a bit of glue there and tuck it in neatly, like that. And right, she has a petticoat, quite a fancy petticoat actually, and we didn't use any lace for that. Those of you that don't really want to do it that way, you don't want to play with your machine, I have given you some angel lace, so you could do your petticoat pretty much the same way. and put it on. I'm going to just trim a bit of this off here, taking it down slightly at an angle, trimming off at an angle like that, and we're going to just gently put it into place and then do the same on the other side. Put a small line of glue down just to overlap the two sides, like that. Just gently overlap them and press them in, and you can probably trim off like that. So we've got it there, give her a nice petticoat, and when we're done we just snip off the piece that we think is too big, and we'll snip off about half an inch, and then just gently close it like that. I'm going to just put a little bit bead of glue up here just to really close it off. And I've given her a little tail. I didn't really want to give her much of a tail in the petticoat because we've got quite a lot of fabric on our dress, so we don't want to create too much bulk. Right, so we've got a petticoat. Right, I've got our fabric out and folded it in half. The grain of the fabric runs one way. If we work that way, we're going to pick up the bias and you'll find the material stretches. On most of your pattern pieces, it'll tell you grain of fabric. You can either run your grain like that. Most of them will tell you cut two, so I have folded a double. And like that. And this one grain like that. So it'll fit quite nicely. I'm actually going to cut two dresses. One I'm going to sew on my machine and embellish with my machine stitches. I'm actually going to show you while I'm doing that. And the other one I'm going to embellish with the lace and stuff that we've actually got in our kit. Right, when you're happy with the way your piece has been laid out, cut it. When it comes to your sleeve, you should have enough space here to be able to flip it over and cut the sleeve on the fold. Just move it up slightly. You're going to have all that extra fabric, so you've got plenty. You don't need to worry about running out. And flip it over. I like to use fabric pens that wash out when I'm drawing my pattern piece on like this. So I'm going to start there and just run the fabric line down. See, there it is. And again across the top. Move that out slightly so you can just see what I'm doing. I've drawn that fabric line and I've just matched it up again there and do that. So we can see that's our sleeve and it's going to cut two. So where it says place on fold, you can either fold your fabric or just flip it over and draw them back to back. Don't cut that middle seam open. It's going to be quite a nice part of your detail a little bit later on. I'm going to cut out these pattern pieces quickly and I'll be back with you shortly. I sometimes find the best mistakes become the best challenges. And I've just done something really stupid and I'm going to share it with you because one of you is going to do it as well. This panel should have been placed on fold and I did not place on a fold. But I've decided we're going to just adjust our pattern accordingly. I'm going to embroider down the front of a dress and actually change it slightly. So, well, let's see what we work out with. Hold on. I've taken my backing paper. You can see it's a fairly thickish paper, but you can use ordinary computer paper. And I like to normally use a spray glue, which will just hold it in place. Now we get a quilting glue in a tin that's called a basting glue. Unfortunately at the moment I haven't been able to get in South Africa because it's all imported from America and there's obviously been a problem. So today I'm actually going to cheat and I'm going to use good old-fashioned Pritt, which is a water-based glue and won't mark my fabric. So I'm going to take my pins out and I want to, now remember this panel is supposed to be a left side and a right side, and because I've left that open or cut it, I didn't leave it on a fold. I'm going to sew it like that because I'm going to in fact do a little pattern stitch all the way down that side. So what I'm going to do is gently just press it down. Now apparently in America you get a paper they use in quilting which you can iron your fabric onto, and it peels off again when you're finished. I will find the name of it. It escapes me right now. You will also find at your embroidery shops or your sewing machine shops, you get what is called an iron-on tearaway paper. It has a smooth side, and it will also work. I'm in fact going to use this paper today because it works for me. The other one is freezer paper, which I believe you get in your supermarkets. It has a slightly waxy side, and it works exactly the same as well. I've never done this with freezer paper, so I'm not too sure how it would be when you start removing it from your stitching. But it'll be worth trying. Somebody let me know. Remember, while you're putting your pattern pieces down, when you've cut two, one must always be a flip. So remember to flip it that it's opposite sides, especially when it's a fabric you can't see which is the right side and the wrong side. Don't forget to flip it. And let's do the last one here quickly. And then I'm going to press it onto my paper and cut it out again. So I'll be back with you shortly. This paper looks almost like Vilene, but it isn't. It will peel away very easily once we start working with it. So don't try Vilene because you can't get the Vilene off your fabric again, and it's going to make it too stiff and it's not going to fall into folds nicely around our doll. I've ironed mine on carefully. As you'll see, this is just an ordinary sheet of paper. I used that so I didn't get this glue all over my iron. And you'll see we've got nice smooth pieces which are going to be a little bit easier to work with for now. With the first one, I'm actually going to do the decorative stitching on my machine. I'm going to try and show you as much of it as I can, but unfortunately I don't have a cameraman with me, so we're going to see how we can get the machine that you can see what I'm doing on the machine. I'm going to give it my best shot. In digging through my cottons, trying to decide what I was going to use as a contrast color, we could use the exact same color and just do it that it will just show up. I of course tend to want everything to show up. I want to see that beautiful work, quite like, because we're using that as a contrast in our sleeves just now. So I like that color, and I must say like that. And we could even go grey, would work quite well too. I'm not going to use a metallic thread, and the reason for that is that we need to use the same thread in the bobbin as on top, because we're going to cut it as an actual edge. And metallic thread will look stunning, but it's going to be stiff. You must remember the metallic thread is thicker than the silk threads. I'm using a silk thread for my edge, so I want it to be fine. I want it to be able to drape like I would normally. I think the best color I've actually found was really that one. Unfortunately, with silk threads, this is what happens if you don't store them correctly. They just really fall off. You'll see a lot of my threads have got nets around them to try and keep the cotton from in fact doing that, because the silk threads are slightly more expensive than normal thread, so we don't want to waste them. Let's see if we can find that color now. Nice orange. I think that is it. It's a stunning color, and I'm going to find this beautiful deep pink as well. Hold on. I found two suitable pinks that I can in fact use. So I'm going to do one of the edges in there just so that you can see how the contrast will work. But the detailing work that I want to stand out, I am in fact going to use this lovely bronze color, which right now doesn't look good with that. But remember, we're going to use this as a binding to let these flow into one unit that actually works. On most machines you have a variety of stitches. I'm going to just look for a really nice scallop, so I want to just look for where my scallops are. I want a nice gentle soft scalloped edge. This is a touchscreen machine, so it's a little bit easier for me. It's a huge edge. What we're looking at there is the actual size it's going to be. But if you don't have this facility, you need to stitch it out a sample. Just take a piece of what you've cut off and try them out. What you're looking for is a small, gentle scallop that'll give you a nice edge. I might need to go into my heirloom sewing to find a smaller. There, that's going to be quite a nice edge. It's small, it's dainty. So let me stitch it out and see what it's going to look like. If when you're busy with your test and you're trying and you start seeing your machine needle is pulling like that, it means your needle is either too thick or it's blunt. Now normally when we're sewing we replace our needle with every project. It's a good idea to change your needle. Needles do get blunt and they do wear out. It's like a spark plug in a car, I suppose. So I'm going to quickly change my needle. As you can see, it looks absolutely terrible. I'm going to change my needle quickly and then we'll try again. Because I'm using a very fine thread and I'm using a very fine thin material, I'm in fact going to use a 60, which is a very small needle, but it should give us nice finish. So let's try again. Leaving your fabric on your backing paper. Remember, this is a test that we're doing now. Let's try again. Already I can see the difference. Smoothly it glides. Lovely edge. I like it. I'm going to play around with a couple of different ones and let's see what we come up with. Back shortly. While I was testing a stitch, I came across a lovely circle stitch there that's going to work absolutely perfectly down the front of the dress. So I'm going to start by stitching that one. I've got my fabric on my freezer paper or my iron-on tearaway, and I've still got a piece of paper underneath it. This is going to help my stitches form like they should. Don't try and stitch right on the edge. You're going to find that you can't. So stitch a little bit on the inside and rather trim away. I've left ample for extra seams, so you won't come to a point where it's not going to fit. It will still fit. So right, let's start and let's get this on the go. Gently just guide your fabric on your machine. Now if you don't have a machine with fancy stitches, you can use any stitch. You'll see I have stitched that edge. I actually settled on quite a nice design there, which you'll see in a little bit more detail a bit later. So I'm going to continue stitching around all my hem edges. Don't worry, we're going to get the continuous line a little bit later. This takes a bit of time, but your patience will be so well rewarded later on. I thought I'd show you this from the other angle. You see I'm working on 2 layers, and I'm stitching fairly close to the edge, but not right on the edge, because we're going to trim that out just now, so you can see some of the other work we've done. There's the front of that dress. I quite like that. It's going to be quite interesting. So yeah, let me carry on and finish it, and I'll get back to you. Once we've stitched around the entire hemline, I decided to do my sleeve edge as well. So once you've done that, you can start peeling away your paper. Now you'll see the paper actually comes off relatively easy. Any loose threads you've got, you're going to snip off with your scissors. And here you'll see if you just gently pull it, it will come out. You're going to get left with that little bit in there, which you just go in gently and take out. The paper will break in any direction, so it's fairly easy. I like to use a tweezer when I'm doing this with embroidery, so I just, like that, break it, pull it off. That is the first layer of paper. I'm going to leave my second layer of paper for now. I'm going to first take off this one, and then I'll show you how to do the second one. You'll see if we gently, without tearing the cotton, pull them out, it does eventually come out completely. This might be a little bit time consuming, but it's well worth the effort. Once you've removed all the bits of paper, and this is a time consuming little effort, but it really is worth the end result. Try not to break any of your stitches if you've done embroidery with one of your fancy stitches. Once you've got it all out, you'll see the iron-on actually just really falls away. And then you just, again, remove it like that. But before I do that, I want to show you how I do my edge. I leave my paper on that last little bit, and I trim my edge with a curved scissors. As close as I can to the stitching without cutting the stitching. Don't panic about this, because what we tend to want to cut closer and closer and closer, and we eventually cut the stitching, and we don't want to cut that stitching. So we'll cut it as close as we can, like that. And then the wonderful thing that actually we get to do now is we take a flame and all those little loose edges melt beautifully into that scallop, and you end up with a nice, neat, lovely edge like that. I'm going to go and do the rest of mine. I'll be back shortly. When you are finished, your sleeve will actually look like that on the right side and like that on the wrong side. It's nice, it's still very soft and it's flexible, and those edges have been beautifully singed to pull in. This fabric is not actually a silk, although it feels like silk. It is called Silk-Tex. It is a synthetic silk which helps it to melt like that on the edges. It's got a polyester blend. If you were using real silk, you wouldn't have that same edge. You would have to just cut a lot closer to your fancy stitching. So that is how your sleeves would look, and I'm now going to go and trim all my dress and everything so I can start putting my dress together. Once we have finished cutting all our main fabric pieces and trimming our edges, we can cut our contrast. Now there's a front contrast insert, and then there are the sleeve inserts. There's enough sufficient fabric to cut your sleeves. Once you've cut your two sleeves, because this fabric frays quite a lot, take a candle and just run your edge over the candle. Careful it doesn't catch on fire, and singe the ends. It'll stop it from fraying out while we're busy working with it. And do the same with your front panel. Now I left the fringing on the bottom of mine. I've actually fringed it out quite a bit because I rather liked the effect it would have as part of the bottom of the skirt, which you'll see shortly. Let's just quickly singe these edges, seal them so they don't fray. There we go. Careful, it can catch fire very quickly. Once you've got it done, you can blow our candle out. Great. The leftover pieces put aside, we'll use those as inserts on the actual skirt at some stage. So I'm going to put that aside. I'm going to put my sleeves aside. And let's move everything out the way. Let's bring our cat back into view. Great. Lift that up slightly. There we go. Great. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to put a skirt front on. It's going to go like that, and I'm going to tuck it in at the waist. Using my glue, I just simply run a bead of glue across the bottom and up the sides. When I'm done, I just move it in a bit, smooth it out. I don't want too much heavy glue. We can just sort of put it onto our piece over the edges. Great. And then I'm going to just thin it out a little bit with my finger. Right, when we've done that, we can place it on the front. I've left that fringing at the bottom. You can see now where the fringing is. And once we've got it the way we're happy with the position, we can tuck it slightly. Let's just nip a little bit off the top here. Putting a pin to hold each side, and again I'm going to put a pin towards the top here just to hold it in place while it's drying, and then I'm going to leave my cat and let that dry. While our cat is drying, I'm going to move her out of the way, and I'm going to do the same with our sleeves. I'm going to turn them that way around. Here we go. Doesn't matter that one may be wider than the other, it's not a problem, because what we're going to do is we're in fact going to glue that onto that and then trim that edge again. So all we're going to have is that one side and that the other side, but we like that fancy edge. We could have, if we wanted to, put our pieces together and then done the edging. I didn't do that because I wanted to see how I was going to do it further on. I think it might have been a little bit too thick, and I don't think we would get the softness that we're hoping to get. Find my other sleeve, there we go, and that. Now you could use Applique Magic. Applique Magic is again a quilting product, and what it does is it fuses with an iron your two pieces of fabric. The only problem with doing it that way, it's going to be rather stiff. So you're going to get a sleeve that's going to have to sort of be pleated and glued in place. It won't give you soft folds. I'm going to do it that way on the one sleeve, and I'm going to do the other one with the glue, and you can then see the difference yourself. Applique Magic comes on a paper base, and when you separate it, it's like a little fine web, and this web will actually melt. Now what is nice sometimes is you can trace on the wrong side your pattern piece, put it on, don't get this glue on your iron, it'll never ever come off. It really makes a mess. So we always, when we do this, we work with 2 sheets of paper, a sheet underneath, a sheet on top, and you iron on the paper. So any excess glue will in fact go onto the paper. I've loosely laid my pieces down on my webbing, and I'm going to trim my webbing slightly bigger. Sally! Sally! Sorry about that. For that moment I actually thought I'd pause the camera trying to get my Yorkie to keep quiet. Right, we do the second sleeve exactly the same way. Now I have used a little bit of Applique Magic on one of my offcuts, and you'll see a little bit later on why. Right, let's go back to our table.